Hi guys, welcome to the very first episode of the Physical Performance Show, where we get behind the lives of top physical performers and we take a look at what it really takes to hit peak performance. And today I've got the great pleasure and the exciting task of interviewing one of my favourite athletes on the scene, and that's Alistair Day, the current 2014-15 Nutri Ironman Series champion, and certainly an Australian name on the rise. So, Ali, welcome along, mate, to the show.
Thanks for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
And we've been talking about sitting down and having this chat for a little while now. So, so I guess I want to throw you a bit of a curly one right out of the gates. And that's, what's the scariest thing you've ever done in your life?
Apart from this kind of stuff, mate, it's the scariest thing I've done in my life. I'd be probably racing, mate. I think that's pretty scary when you put so much training and put so much effort into everything that you do, and then you line up on the start line. I find that pretty scary and pretty daunting, to tell you the truth, mate. But from the occasional big wave or something like that and those things, and obviously doing this kind of stuff when I was younger, I found it pretty hard to sort of be myself and be normal, I guess, around the media. That was always pretty hard for me.
That's an interesting point. So it's fascinating to hear you say that you'd, compare media commitments in line with some of the big surf you've tackled. So let's just dig a bit deeper on that. What was it about the media stuff as you were a developing athlete, a name on the rise, coming through the ranks, that you found particularly daunting?
Yeah, I guess it's just, like the comparison is obviously so different from being out in the surf to facing the media. I think it was just being brought up on the South Coast. I was pretty shy, and the rise for me, I went from being not so great as a junior athlete as an Ironman to just getting thrown straight in the deep end and getting some pretty good results straight away. So the success I had happened, I felt like it happened pretty quick and almost happened overnight. So it was like I went from being not that great to being thrown into the media and learning how to deal with that and getting, that added expectation, that added pressure that the media and you sort of put on yourself as an athlete. So I love doing it now. I said to you just before we turned the cameras on, I love dealing with the media now, because now I know what I sort of want to put out there, the message I want to put out there to fans, to my family, to kids that are watching on TV or to whatever. And I think that's just because I'm happy for who I am and the purpose that I want to get out there and the message I want to get out there at the end of the day. So it's, as I said, mate, I really enjoy it now.
And so, and Ali, it's interesting hearing that from you, because from an outsider looking in prior to us meeting, your character is someone that resonated, I think, is very endearing on the screen and, on different media bits that I'd viewed. So it's funny that you had a certain perception of being portrayed, yet I guess you being you is just, certainly has made you one of the most endeared sort of, sports guys running around.
Cheers,
so, Ali, just interesting, you said that there was a moment where you sort of got thrust into it, like you felt like your career all of a sudden skyrocketed. What was that moment? What was that turning point?
Yeah, it was kind of, I'll go a little bit deeper. I obviously, around the ages of 14, 15, 16, where I guess other temptations come into your life, partying, girls, those sorts of things, other sports for me especially, I had the opportunity to go play footy or run or do some triathlons and things like that. But, I guess through that age there was those temptations, and at that age I almost, I guess, fell to those temptations, just giving up what I wanted to do, and I stuck with it. And, at the age of, I think, 18 or 17, 18, I won my first race at my home beach down at Rarilla. And it just almost felt like that year was a blur. I won the state title that year. The next year I qualified in the series. And as I sort of said, it just happened so fast for me, mate. It was kind of like I went from being an average sort of competitor that was enjoying what I was doing, but at the same time had thoughts of doing other things and quitting and giving it away, and just, I guess, having a normal life, just, doing an apprenticeship down in Kiama, surfing down there. That would still make me so happy as well, mate. That's what I think that's probably what I would do if I wasn't doing this right now. But as I said, it just happened overnight almost, mate. I won that race. I think it was a huge shock for me. It was a huge shock for everyone. And then I guess it just went on to making the series the following year after I think I was 18 or 19 or something like that. And youngest guy in it from a small town. Not many people had heard from me or of me. But it was, by far the greatest thing that's happened to me for sure.
And so that race, just to be clear, that was the state titles, was it?
Yeah, that was the, I'd won a few team races. Most kids growing up in our sport, most of the guys you see, I guess, in the professional series are, have won state titles, have won, from nippers all the way through. I was kind of a bit different. I know there's a few other people out there that have the similar sort of story to me, but yeah, it was growing up. I wasn't a superstar from the moment I hit the water. It was something that I had to really work hard at and get better at. And I still believe that, I've got so much to work on to get to where I sort of want to be, I guess.
I'm going to be asking you about that as we go for sure. Where you want to be, where does Ali Day want to be? Ali, what was the conversation like in your head when you were a teenager? You said that you were thinking about, do I have sort of follow a normal career path in terms of apprenticeship, live on the South Coast, New South Wales, versus jumping over and really committing yourself to the pursuit of, professional sport and Ironman. What was that? Can you describe that? What was it like in your head at that stage? Was there two sides vying for you?
Yeah, it was probably like the first time that that peer pressure sort of affected me, I guess, because a lot of my mates, and they're still my best mates, were, doing different things, and every now and then you weren't able to go to school camp or go to this social event or something like that, just because you weren't sacrificing it. You were going to a carnival, or you had to get up early the next day, so you were missing out on those little bits and pieces, and that kind of bothered me at the start. But towards the end, once I got in the series, it wasn't. I don't think it's ever been a sacrifice, mate. I don't really believe in having to make a sacrifice, because what I get to do every day is something I love. And, those two words don't go together, love and sacrifice, do they, mate? It's kind of what I get to do every day is I love it. And, hopefully I can keep doing it forever, mate. And, as I said, in my mind at that period, it was kind of like, the good and the bad sort of thing. You should go do this, or you should go do that, or you should give up on yourself, or don't give up on yourself, Ali. And at that time, mate, I had obviously some great mentors around me, a few real old school sort of coaches at that time. And they were awesome. They were just like, Ali, like, if you want to do what you want to do, you have to work hard. And that's, honestly, it was like the same as making the series. It just almost happened overnight. It was a 400-meter swim, a 400-meter race at swim club one night, and I was racing my big brother and a few other guys that were in the A lane at swimming, and I was in the B lane, and I was mucking around, and my coach grabbed me, and I was swimming in lane 8, and he was like, "Come on, Ali, have a crack at this." And I had a real crack, and I ended up winning that 400. It was a small victory for me, but it was one of those light bulb moments where the light bulb went on in my head, and I was kind of like, well, you know what? Like, if I work harder than anyone else, like that makes sense. If I work harder than anyone else, I'm going to turn up to a race, and I'm going to have just as much chance as doing as well as what they do, don't I? So, as I said, I had some great mentors at that age, and it was that kind of didn't really make sense, mate. But yeah, that was kind of the kind of what happened for me.
That's interesting. And that 400-meter freestyle was in the pool, was it?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. And you raced your brother.
Yeah.
Your brother is, how old is he?
Yeah, so Blair's, so I'm 25, Blair's 28, and he was a fish when he was younger. He was in the A lane. I used to chase him around, obviously in the pool, obviously running, in the surf, everything we did. We weren't competitive with each other, but, I always just, looked up to him, and we've still got such a close relationship. He's been handling for me for the past, 7 years or something now, which is really, I think it's really special that we both can share that together. And I've got a lot to thank him for, obviously, for that, letting me win that 400 free that day.
Well, there you go, Blair. There's a plug for you, mate. Well done. And those mentors you mentioned, can you tell us a bit more about those guys? Like you said, your swim coach, and who
Yeah,
else?
I had a great, through that period of training down on the South Coast, I had a great swim coach at the time, Brian Walker, that was, a teacher as well at the time, and he was more of just a great man manager, I guess. I was young at that age, and yeah, he taught my brother a lot about, discipline and respect and doing the right thing by others and things like that, and that sort of rubbed off on Blair, and then that rubbed off on me. And then I had a coach in the surf, Marty Smith, that was just a dad that would come down, a few afternoons a week, and he was just, he was tough as nails, and I've got a lot to thank him for. He was, at the time, a few of us, we would complain, and not complain, but, we'd be like, far out, Marty, what are you making us do this for? But I look back on it now, and he worked us really, really hard, and he was great. And then had an awesome swim coach also at that time after I left Brian in Mick McKeon. His brother Ron's in the Australian, his what would it be? His nephews, Emma McKeon and Dave McKeon, are in the Australian swim team now. So I was coached by Mick at that time, and he sort of really helped me when I first came onto the scene in the Kellogs. And once again, they were from the South Coast, so they were really tough. And I really enjoyed those three guys as my coaches at that period.
So that took you right up to the start of your professional life, so to speak, the Nutri series, and then. Yeah. And then from there, what happened from there? So my understanding is you somehow then found your way from the South Coast in New South Wales here in Australia to, the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. So can you unpack that transition period and what that was like? Because I presume you left, family, mum and dad on the South Coast to go north as a fairly young guy.
Yeah, well, I did. The goal was, I guess, was always to make the series. That's all I wanted to do, mate. And then I made it that. I had one crack at it when I was just finished school, I think, and just missed out. The following year, under the guidance of those coaches, Mick and Marty down at home, I qualified. I think the first year I got a 6th. The year after I got a 7th. Throughout that time, I became close with Michael King up on the Sunshine Coast. I went up a few times and did, a couple of weeks training up there, stayed with him. I think that second year throughout the series, I got that 7th. Me and Kingy grew closer as friends. We spoke a lot more on the phone. And after the Australian titles that year, I think I had a pretty crappy finish, mate. I think 10th or 11th or something in the Australian Ironman final, which is still amazing, but I knew I could do better. And I think, honestly, that was the Sunday afternoon. The Monday, I rang Kingy. Kingy flew down. He met mum and dad at in Bondi or something like that. We chatted, and then I moved up pretty much. And I did 4 years up there with Kingy, and that was some of the best 4 years of my life.
So that was at Mooloolaba.
Yeah.
Yep, Mooloolaba Surf Club. And prior to that, your only club had been...
So I started as a nipper in Kiama, for the first couple of years. I started as an 8-year-old or something like that to the under 10s or maybe under 9s or something. And then, I moved 15 minutes up the road, heading north to Rarilla, where, we just went up there because there was more teams, there was more opportunity for training purposes and things like that. And then I moved on to Mooloolaba.
And so what was the shift up? You were how old at that stage?
Just turned 20. So I was turning 21, mate. Yeah. So turning 21. That was my first year at the surf club there on the Sunshine Coast.
And you just finished the Aussie titles 10th, the Australian Surf Lifesaving titles, Ironman race, and the series was that year. How did you go in the series that year? Your debut year?
Debut year, I got 6. So I qualified by 1 point. I got into the series the following year, which I thought was awesome. I didn't really deserve it, but I took it. So back then they only took 6 through, and I think the first few guys were Shannon, Zane, Kai, and I got through in 6. A kid from a 19-year-old from the South Coast, which I thought was pretty special to me, and obviously I did that, and then the following year I backed it up and I got a 7th in the series and got through again because I was taking 8 through that year. And then I guess as an athlete, mate, and as a human being, you always want to see where you can get to, and as I said, I built that relationship with Kingy, and then mum and dad were kind of like, I think you should pursue it, and I think you should go up and see where you can get to. And the following year, I led the series the whole way through until the last race, and Kane Eckstein got me in that year, and it was one of my favourite years just because had no pressure or no expectation on me, and it was just a really fun year for me.
So that was what year? What series was that? That was, if you remember,
2012 maybe, 2012, 2013.
Was it the final at Noosa?
Yeah, it was a really hot round at Noosa, and look, Kane deserved to win that year. He was incredible, mate. He was it was one of the hardest years I've ever raced in the series, just because 6 different races, 6 different locations, so many different weathers and surf conditions and things like that. And he was incredible that day. So, but yeah, it was awesome for me, mate. That 6th, the 7th, and year after I got a 2nd. So it was kind of like, oh yes, I've made the right decision, and everything was paying off for me.
So it was like validating for your efforts and your decision to pursue it. What was the emotion around standing on the podium at the end of the series? You've, as any athlete does, you sacrifice in terms of, the other career paths to put it all on the line. So was that a real moment of like, I can do this, I'm where I'm meant to be? Yeah,
it was. It was a huge, I admit when I was at school, I wasn't the sharpest, I wasn't that, I think, but that was because I probably wasn't putting much time and effort into it. At that time, I didn't realise what discipline, what hard work was. I wasn't interested in it.
You were always in the surf, mate.
Yeah, I was interested in sport. I was so interested in footy and running and doing, extracurricular activities outside of school. That was, so when I did get 2nd that year and I led the whole way through, and there was quite a bit of media behind it, it was kind of like, wow, it's... yeah, it did. It validated what I was doing the sport for, and all those. It was hard because at that time, a lot of, what happens if it didn't pay off? What happens if it didn't work? There's all those sorts of things that run through your mind, and I guess you've just got to. You can't think about that failure. You've just got to go and do it. And if you fail, you fail. It's fine. Like you learn more from your failures than from your triumphs, I believe. So that year, everyone's like, oh, you must be so disappointed that you got 2nd. I was like, no way. Like, I've got 2nd. Like, I don't think I'll ever do any better. So it was a really proud moment for me, mate, and obviously a huge moment for my family as well. And I've got to give my mum and dad, that they were awesome that year. They always have been awesome. They've never forced me to go do something or try something. They were always behind me, and they still are now. So I think it's pretty cool.
Good on Mr. and Mrs. Day, who actually met your dad, and I think your mum on the weekend. It was great. And at the most recent round of the series, Ali, certainly it's something I know I admire about you, and I know many others that follow you through the sport do, and that is your attitude. And you just said something that was really interesting. You said you learn more from your failures than your successes. In those roundabout words, what's been one failure through, or one shortcoming you've come across or experienced in your career to date that's taught you the most?
Yeah, that's a really good question, mate, because I do have a few. I guess that's a good question, mate, because I have had, obviously injuries and illnesses and things like that. I guess the biggest one, I've almost had one every I think everyone has them. Everyone has them every day, little setbacks and things like that. But for me, it would have been in 2013, had a great, not a great night. I didn't have a great preseason at all. I went back to training with a great attitude. And throughout that year of preseason, of the 20 weeks or so, what you do, I was sick a lot. I was injured. I had a stress fracture in my foot. It was just a real up and down sort of year. But the training, obviously, that I was doing was really good. I was getting some good work in there for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I would break down. Then I'd get a couple of weeks in, then I'd break down. And that year I went on, 10 days out from the Coolangatta Gold in 2013. Kingy rang and he said, I think you should do it. I literally only just got my moon boot off, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. We kept it under wraps. We didn't tell many people. We lined up. We did it. We got through it. Obviously, I won. It was an awesome moment. But as soon as I crossed that line, I knew that I'd used all of my reserves that year in trying to get myself up for that race, and all those times throughout the year when I was sick or injured, I knew I'd used everything. And as an athlete, that people would understand what I mean. I was shot. I went home. I was still on cloud nine, obviously, after winning an event that I probably shouldn't have won because of the training that I did before it and the off season I had before it. I went home, and then the week after that, I tried to get back into training, and was just spent. I had nothing. I went from doing a 46K race to doing 400 meters the week after. My heart rate was through the roof. I was tired. I think I went home that day and slept for like 8 or 9 hours or something like that. I knew something was wrong. Pretty much to fast forward, I took that year out of the series, took 12 months off almost from the sport, got myself better, and came back the year after and won the series. So it was that was probably the biggest speed hump I've had in my life. It was like everything had always been pretty much perfect, and then it was like what I loved was taken away from me like that. So it was I was so immersed in the sport, and then it was just taken away one day, and obviously paid obviously just had to take that time off, mate, and it was the best time of my life when I look back on it now.
So that was, just to clarify, so you had your 3 seasons in the series, going from 7th to 6th.
I think I had the 6th, the 7th. I think I had a second the year after, and then I think I had a third, and then the year after that, I think I got crook.
Was the year. And you just won the Coolangatta Gold. And for overseas listeners, can you just quickly describe the Coolangatta Gold?
Yeah, well, it's a race that started in the 80s. I think Guy Leach was he was the inaugural winner of it. They made a movie out of it. If you haven't seen it, go look at it. It's a great movie. So it's just based on a race from Surfers Paradise all the way to Coolangatta and back. It's a marathon race, 40 something Ks, 20 on the ski. There's over 10 on the run. There's 3.5 in the swim, and there's a 5.5K board. So it all adds up and takes you about 4.5 hours or something like that. So it wasn't a race that you can go in underdone. You've got to go in doing the work. And obviously Kingy, and I did too, like I'd never blame myself or I'd never blame Michael for, at the end of the day, it was my decision to do the race. And I did it. And I learnt so much about myself that week, putting my foot on the start line and just doing it, because I think Kingy said to me, Ali, as an athlete, you only get limited opportunities in this sport and in this life, so I think you should do it. We put it all on the line, and that paid off, but obviously I took a couple of weeks off there, and I just couldn't get back to 100% health.
And I mean, that's the fine line every athlete seeking best performance has to tread, isn't it? It's that, how much is too much versus how much is not enough, and so it's and as you say, it's a great learning curve, and you wouldn't change it. It's you've turned what could have been a disastrous year into a positive. So what was through that year, obviously, what were the steps you took to get yourself back to the start line for the following series, the following year? I imagine through that year off, as you said, you had what you loved to do taken away from you, and by the fact that you were, by virtue of your health, let alone the injuries, kind of incapacitated that year. Yeah. What were the steps that you took, and describe the emotion?
It's a really good question, I do love answering it, because I guess I'm proud of like what happened, not what happened, but how I dealt with it. I was pretty proud of the person, how I dealt with all of that. I pretty much sat in the room with Kingy and my Dr. Mark on the Sunshine Coast, and I think I was telling you the other day, Brad, that they were kind of like, we don't know what's going on with you, Ali. We know you're not 100%. You're not going to do the series. And I was kind of like, whoa. I drove home that night. I booked a flight from the Sunshine Coast the next day to fly out back down to my hometown of Kiama. I pretty much went down there. Throughout that time, obviously Mum and Dad were pretty worried about me, because, I went from winning a race that was a marathon race to the couple of weeks later I couldn't do anything. I was, bedridden pretty much. I went and saw a lot of doctors at that time, a lot of specialists, blood tests, you name it, I did it. One day I drove down to the AIS with Mum at Canberra. We'd had an early start, went down there and saw a doctor down there, and she was really helpful as well. And I guess I just wasn't getting any answers. Like, no one was telling me, Ali, this is wrong. You know, you're not doing this right, or you're not doing that right. And I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that my energy levels, my motivation, my attitude, everything was just out of whack. There was no balance in my life. So I met up with an old friend of mine by the name of Keegan Smith. And yeah, we met at a paleo cafe in Bondi with my mum and with my partner Kel. And I just said, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm sort of dealing with. And I probably should give a bit of brief. Keegan at that time was working with the Roosters, the Sydney NRL team, the Roosters, head of performance there. So I'd been following him on social media, and we met up, as I said, and we went to this paleo cafe, and I was telling him these symptoms that I was experiencing, and he was kind of like, oh, this is that, this has to do with that. And it was the most information I got in half an hour that I'd got throughout that whole period from anyone, I guess, you know. And you know, this guy wasn't a doctor or anything like that. He was just a guy that knew a little bit about health, and he'd kind of gone through the same thing as me. So he pretty much just said, Ali, I want you to go home now, and I want you to get back in touch with nature. I want you to go and do the things you love again, which was surf, which was have a normal life. Forget about the series that was happening that weekend in Perth. Forget about everything. It's done. Get back in touch with nature. Start eating whole foods. So I went on a week detox with Kel, and all we ate was just vegetables and fruit, raw veggies for a week. And immediately after that, I started noticing my energy got better. And I'm blabbering on here, mate, but his key principles are just getting the basics right. So movement, my diet, mind, and there's one other, I've forgotten it now, but they were the things that he really focused on. So he broke me out of some old habits. He got me back in touch with what I loved, why I was doing it. He got me eating better. He got me sleeping better. He got me thinking better. He just steered me, I guess, throughout that period of 3 or 4 months of just being bedridden to getting to doing 20 minutes of running up until, I guess, all the way up until going back up to the Sunshine Coast and training with Kingy, and then going on to win the series that year. So it was kind of, I know that, as I said, I blabber on a bit, mate, and some of this doesn't make sense, but I guess if I didn't meet Keegan, I don't know where I would be now without him. So we've got a lot to thank him for.
Yeah, and we'll pop Keegan's social media profiles in the show notes so listeners can jump over and check Keegan out. So obviously he was a key step in that rehabilitation period, meeting Keegan, following his advice, implementing it, and then, I guess, busting out. At what point did you know you were starting to get some of your mojo, the early day mojo that saw you on the podium for a couple of times prior to the fall, if you like? How did you know you were starting to climb back? What were you starting to feel and experience? What was your body, telling you?
Yeah, I guess I was, I grew up. That's why I started the sport. I grew up because I love the ocean. And I'd go down to the beach and I'd surf for 15 minutes and come in, and Kel would be sitting on the beach. And I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I physically can't paddle out. And it just, each week I got stronger and stronger. Like we set, little goals, and I'd go to the gym and it sounds silly. I'd write down what I did that day, how I was feeling motivation wise, how I was feeling in my body, what changes I noticed. And we kept track of like how I was sleeping that night, everything we kept track of. And it wasn't scientific. It wasn't anything really structured. It was just simplified, and we just simplified everything. And I guess mentally it got to the point where, I felt almost 100% again, I think. I probably wasn't 100% in the head. I was double, sort of second guessing myself, I guess. And then, I went back up to the Sunshine Coast, jumped in with Kingy. And I guess the biggest thing for me was I went to training that day and I got through the session fine. I got through the next day fine. I got through that week fine. And I knew that I was back. I knew that, I was living on this new diet. I was thinking differently. I looked at life differently. Everything completely changed. I took 180 degrees from what I left the Sunshine Coast and came back to the Sunshine Coast. I came back a different person, I think, and I had to change for the better. And I look back on it now, and it was such a great time. It was a huge. I didn't care if I didn't get to race again. I just wanted to be healthy again. Wow. And when I got back up, mate, I was stoked.
So that one or two back-to-back sessions back with the squad, you knew you'd sort of escaped it. It was, 6 months, was it, or longer, a year?
It was probably, the gold was October that year. And then obviously I took November, December, January, February, March. I think I went back up in April. So I think Dad counted, he's pretty... There was over 100 days down in Kiama where I just I guess hung down there, and that had a lot to do with it as well, mate. You know, I went back, and it was almost like throughout that 7 years I didn't really stay as connected as I liked with the South Coast, and I went down there and did things that I did when I was younger. Hung out with friends, I surfed. You know, I went to all those spots I went to, where I was, grew up being a kid and stuff like that. So that had a huge impact on me as well, like being around those surroundings, being around those people, and they motivated me to get back to where I wanted to be.
And I think that sometimes a change in scenery is therapeutic in itself, where you can just escape some of the day-to-day distractions and really just. So that's a great story. So if you had to. Two interesting things I just want to dig a bit deeper on there. You said you're second guessing yourself. What were you second guessing?
Two things, mate. Obviously, was this diet and all this change that I've done, because I did it all pretty much on my own. No one was training with me. I was down at Kiama paddling a ski and swimming on my own, running on my own. Was it going to be the alley day that I'd seen at the Gold that year? You know, was it going to be this? Was it going to be better? Was it going to be worse? How was it going to fit in with the other athletes? You know what I mean? Was it going to be on the same sort of level that I left the sport in? So that were, the diet and those two sort of things. The performance side, was I going to be the same again that I left it? Just because I changed everything, mate, pretty much. And was I going to be feeling the same? Was I going to be just as fit? Am I going to have the same ability? They were the kind of questions that were, I had doubt over, I guess. And obviously you're shitting yourself because you took so long off, and I didn't want to slide back down that hole where I was and not get out of bed and not have any love for life or love for what I do anymore. I guess that's ultimately what worried me at the end of the day. I didn't want to feel like I was feeling again.
Yeah. So that, those doubts and that fear around, did you still have what it took, I guess, was there? Wow. Well, thanks for sharing so candidly around that. And if you had to summarise that whole lesson, back to the lesson around it, if you had to put that in to encourage other athletes, other people pursuing peak performance, kids coming through the sport, if you had to put the lesson in a little brief little sentence, what would you say as a little maxim around that journey of going from?
Yeah, I do believe, as we sort of said before, mate, I do believe in. With those they're not even failures, they're just little speed humps along the road to your journey. I do really believe that they shape you as a person, and they're meant to happen. That year, that was meant to happen. I'm meant to be sitting here right now, and you're meant to be sitting here. We're meant to be talking. All those little things that have gone well or haven't gone so well, I think they're supposed to happen. And as an athlete, to young kids, to anyone that is aspiring to do whatever they want to do, they're going to be thrown at you. And I think you've just got to deal with them the best way you sort of know how, and not think too much about it, not put too much energy into it. That's supposed to happen, and you then go down the next path. You know what I mean, mate? That there's a roadblock there. Okay, cool. Well, let's go down another avenue, or let's go down another street. So that's a huge thing for me. And another thing for me is now as I'm getting a bit older, I hope I'm not too old, mate, but a bit more experience is just trying to get the best out of myself every day. Like give myself the best opportunity every day, whether that be spending more time on this or spending more time on that or whatever it is. I think that's one that sticks pretty clear with me right now.
Yeah, Great, and I think it's a tweetable. The speed humps shape you. That's and certainly from my prior to going in the professional world of physiotherapy, my experience is I look back now, and as uncomfortable as some of the pain points were, the challenges, the speed bumps, as you say, really are the shaping agents in your life. It's not so much when things are going rosy. It's those difficult times, as much as we'd like them not to be that way. So shifting gears, if we can, from the struggle into the victory, that's an incredible change to go from, doubts, fear about coming back to winning your first Nutri series, something that I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, you aspired to from those junior days growing up in the South Coast.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It's a crazy story. When you say it just then to me, mate, I still can't really sort of believe it. It was... I'd always aspired to be an Ironman. Always wanted to be a professional sports person in some way or form, or whatever it was. I wanted to be involved. But Ironman was obviously the one that was closest to me, and I had so many heroes at that time that I'd love watching on TV. So I just wanted to be them. Once I got in the series, it was kind of like, okay, I just want to qualify for the series after. And then the year after that, I was kind of like, well, I want to get on the podium. That'd be really cool. And once I got on the podium, I was like, far out. I'm pretty happy now. Like, not much can beat this. And then I think the year after, I won a race, and I thought, seriously, I could die a happy man now. I've won a professional race. This is awesome. Then the year after that, obviously had the year off. I came back with a completely different mindset, a completely different way of thinking going into races. It was just a way more relaxed approach, mate. I went in, I used to listen to pump up music and put the headphones on and
what was on the playlist
back
then?
A bit of Eminem, had some Rocky on there, everything, mate. And then went over to Perth that year after having the year off. Kellogs were great. They gave me that wild card that year, and went over, and I was just like, I said to Kel, I think before the race, I was just happy, mate. I was happy to be there, and honestly, that's probably what made me win that day and win the series, just because I'd let go of what I thought was important, and I worried more about things that weren't, I wasn't worrying as much. I was more focused on, it's hard to explain. It was a funny moment for me. I went over to Perth, and everything just happened like that, and it happened so clearly, and everything was almost still in time, and I was just running up the beach going, I shouldn't be in front, I'm just happy to be here.
Because that was the first race back in the series. You'd had a year out. It's your first race back, yet to win a race in the series.
I'd won one.
So
I won one and then took the year off.
Yep. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden you find yourself running to the finish line in your first race back after your year off, all those doubts, all those fears. And describe that. You're obviously, as you said, you didn't think you should be there. And
no, I was sitting under the tent before the race, sitting there with Kel, and as I said, I was just happy to be there. I was happy to have my health back. I was happy to be on the line with 16 or 18 or however many guys there were that year, the best in Australia. I was happy to be in Perth. I was stoked that my dad and my brother were there. I was stoked that my beautiful partner was there. And I think I just said to Kel, I just don't want to come last. And it just, as I said, we started racing. It was an hour, and a long race. It was about an hour or something like that. And the longer the race went, the better I got. And I ended up, getting off the ski and was in front, ran up the beach. And I think I just looked at Kel and was like, this shouldn't be happening, you know what I mean? Like, what's and I was just, and that happened almost at every race that year, mate. Things, as I sort of said before, I just believed in it, and didn't think too much about it, didn't put too much energy into it, or the point score, or whatever it was. And, as I sort of said before, mate, it was supposed to obviously happen to me.
And so you won the series, first series victory after a couple of podiums and your inaugural, second year. At that point, what are you thinking at that point? You've won the series, you were 24?
Yeah.
24, got the series. Going back to your junior years, you fell in love with the sport, young in life. You've climbed the real pinnacle, I guess, in surf lifesaving. It's the Nutri series in the Australian Ironman title.
Yeah.
What's describe the emotion around that? So you stand on the dice, get the series. It was a close victory over obviously multiple champion of the series, Shannon Eckstein, by a point. There's a nail biter, right? What point do you, or describe the conversation you had and with partner Kel and your support network about, what the next steps are? You've climbed the summit. Now what?
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. It's throughout the year, it was, as each race went on, you could feel the pressure building and building, because I'd gotten close before, but was never close enough, and it was never the right time for me to win. The morning of the race down at Newcastle, I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. I was so scared because, all I had to, not all I had to do was, well, pretty much, it was simple. All I had to do was go out and do what I do every day, and it was pretty much going to be, between you and Shannon. And that's a scary prospect, I guess. You're racing this guy who's your hero, who's your friend, who you've looked up to for so long. He's arguably the greatest ever. So that was, and then when I won that day, you sit back and I was kind of like, oh, do I really deserve it? There's so many emotions running through your head. And I guess now, after this year, after last year winning, it's, I haven't put a huge amount of thought into it, mate, but it's probably, when I moved down to the Gold Coast this year and obviously met yourself and fell in love with the guys at Surfers, it was all about finding my purpose and, delivering that to people. And I've only kind of really just found it, mate. And that's just, I get a huge kick out of just helping people and, inspiring people, I guess. And I guess that's my goal at the moment, is to go out there and do what I do and love what I do and let people see that. Let people see that I am really passionate and I do really love this and I do really care about people. And the more people we can get on board, the more, I guess, the more it helps the universe and it helps the world. I don't know if that makes sense, mate, but...
Well, it sounds like even what you're describing, Ali, that the pressure's shifted. Is that a fair statement? The pressure, the expectation. You had your breakthrough win, which, certainly as an observer of the series, I'd listened to the commentary and, Ali Day, he's knocking on the door, he's going to win a race and, got one. So it sounds like the pressure shifted and your belief gauge maybe got jolted over to, I'm good enough for this.
Yeah, I guess it did. It was just... I guess it was only a matter of time before everything was just going to fall into place for me. And, I still sit here now when people say that, that the list of the guys that are in front of me, I think there's only like 11 guys that have won a like a Kellogs series or an Uncle Toby series. And they're just so hard to win, mate. They're literally the hardest thing, and they take a lot out of you to win. Like they're... I think I said to Shannon on the weekend, I said, mate, I don't know how you do it. I literally don't know how you've done it for this long and dealt with the pressure and things like that. And I just feel so grateful that I got to win one. It's from what happens now in this sport or in my life, it really is just a bonus, mate. Like it's, I get to still do what I do every day and I love it. And anything now is just a bonus because I did not see last year coming at all.
Yeah, wow. It's a great lesson, though, for anyone listening, just persist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, as I said, I don't think I was the greatest nipper or the greatest cadet coming through, but I worked hard. I'm not going to lie. If someone had, it's working hard. You can't substitute it. Like, I worked my ass off. And I hate saying that because I don't like to big note myself, but when I was down at home, I wouldn't... I had those great coaches and I wouldn't miss laps. I'd do more. I'd do the 1%ers, and that's years and years and years of repetition and constant repetition. And I'd like to think my coaches would say that about me as well, doing years. And I feel a bit bad saying that because hopefully not too many people are listening to this, but that's ultimately anyone that's been successful will say that. You would say that, Brad. It's work. It's your work ethic and it's your discipline, and that's what's got me through to where I am today.
And it's those cumulative little decisions to not cut corners. And I've got a favourite saying, literally my favourite saying is a shortcut will only cut you short. Yeah. It's those 2 laps at the end of your swim warm down where everyone else is out and no one else would notice. But no, it's a 400 warm down. I'm going to do 400 rather than 300.
Yeah, it got to the point where I was like almost, I still am a bit now, like it had to, if it was 4.3 the session, I'd have to do 4.5. It wasn't 4.4, it was 4.5. And it was, you do this right or you're not getting out, or you do an extra one of those or you do that. That's just the way my mind works, and it still works. And I guess that's why, I don't know, I wasn't great at school or anything like that. I struggled with learning things, but when it was, hey, if you can do this or do that and put your mind to it, like I could do it. I found that easy, like that was easy to me, being able to dedicate time. And if someone put something in front of me, like dangling a carrot, I could just go and do it. You know what I mean? It was like you don't have to think too much about it. You just go and do it.
Yeah, no, that's and so Ali, just in general terms, the shift in slightly gears away from the professional Ironman racing, talking about what it takes to succeed at the highest level in any sport. Can you unpack a little bit about two things? What your week looks like in terms of training, just for the listeners, and then secondly, just want to unpack a little bit about what your support network looks like, how important that is to your success. So, starting, mate, with training, what's a typical week in the life of Ali Day look like in sort of peak training, peak season?
Yeah, peak training, mate. Obviously, at the moment, we've just come off the back of racing's round 1 and 2, so this week's pretty light for me. But a normal week would consist of 4 swims, anywhere between 6 and 7K sort of thing. So that's a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and a Friday. I do a back-to-back session on a Monday and Tuesday. So I go straight from swimming on a Monday to board training, and then on swimming on a Tuesday, I go straight from swimming to into running. So there's a few back-to-back sessions there, which I found have helped me a lot, just to to sort of get used to that backing up sort of thing. We're out in the ocean every afternoon, either on our skis and boards. There's a gym session in there, and there's about 3 run sessions as well. So, there's probably about 15 sessions, maybe 16 sessions or something like that. So it's always varying depending on the time of the year, obviously depending on what you're training for at that time. For the gold, a month or so ago, we were doing some really long sessions. On a Saturday, it would be almost a run through, almost 4 hours or something like that. It's but as I said, mate, I love doing it. It's awesome.
What's your most loved and hated session during a week?
Yeah, well, they're both the same, because I think your most hated one you get the most out of. You're the most scared of, and Zane Hamill, our coach, has put a few of those there for us, and so has Glenn Baker as well.
Zane Hamill at Paradise Surf.
Zane Hamill, our coach at Surfers, and Glenn Baker, my coach at Southport for swimming. So they both have worked really, really well together this year. And Wednesday afternoon board training, we paddled just behind here at Budds Beach with Zane. That's always hard. It's in the flat. You can't hide. It's hot, and he just always sets a bit of a torture session for us. But as I said, it's my most hated, but I love it too. It's hard, and you get the most out of it.
It's a fascinating insight. The one that you hate the most is the one that you love the most, because you know what it's obviously.
You finish this. Anyone knows when you finish those really grueling sessions, you get the most out of that, and not physically, you get the most mentally out of it. I think you turn up to a session, you're like, all right, I've just got to get through this, and that's what it's going to be like on race day. Sometimes you've got to really sort of tell yourself you're going to be okay, and you'll get through it. Find
those new gears. So, what's the most memorable, hardest swim session you've ever done in your life? What was the main set?
What was that? This year?
Yeah, or in your life that you can remember. You went, I can't believe I got through that.
Geez, there's been some tough ones Glenn has set me this year. That's the thing. I think when you do a hard session, you get through it, and then you almost forget about it. Sometimes I used to write all my sessions down, and I've done, I wouldn't say a session, but some of the sessions I did down with Marty and Mick down at Wollongong. Sorry, they were always hard. Some of the days we did with Kingy were huge. You wouldn't lie. He was tough too, and then down here we've done some really hard days. I think some of those Tuesdays, Glenn smashes me in the pool. I'll go straight to running hills at Miami and doing some 2K, 1K time trials, and then the afternoon, Zane will smash me again on the ski. So it's 3 sort of back-to-back sessions throughout that day that are pretty big. So I won't name a session, but maybe for next time. So
That's the day, yeah. So Wednesday, was it? Wednesdays
yeah, Tuesday, Wednesdays are hard.
Wednesday.
They're hard days, yeah.
So, and what's your sleep pattern like? I want to talk about the support network as well, but just out of interest, what's your rhythm of sleep look like? How important have you found that to be?
Huge. It's like when I met Keegan, I've always been a great sleeper. Always have been. Can nod off like that. You know what I mean? I got into a habit on the Sunshine Coast and maybe even a little bit when I was living down at home. I'd have to come home and sleep after swimming and things like that. I've broken that now, and I kind of only just sleep. I listen to my body more. You know, I sleep when I need to sleep. I just make sure every night that I'm getting 8 or 9 hours. I think it's the best recovery tool you can use. And I think you can learn a lot from your sleep with, like how good is your sleep? People go, how'd you sleep? They go, how many hours did you get? Oh, I got 10 hours, but how good were your 10 hours? I think it's so important that you're getting, you might get 8 good hours and that's better than 12 hours in bed. You know what I mean? I think you gotta look into that and how, rate your sleep. What makes you sleep good, you know what I mean?
So do you use data, Ali,
Yeah, we do. So Zane's got a thing that we fill out each week with how many hours we get of sleep, how good the quality of sleep is, how we wake up, our resting heart rate sort of thing. And it's, it's obviously great for Zane, but it's great for us as an athlete. It keeps us, it helps us, I think, a lot. And so sleep is I try nail my sleeps, especially the week leading up into a race or just all the time. Sleep is so important and people often neglect it a lot, I think.
Was there a time in your career when you didn't have that revelation about the importance of sleep? And
yeah, at that time, like when I was younger, it was sleep, nutrition wasn't that great, recovery wasn't that great. I think it's those extra 1%ers that you can do now, and you ask any of those top athletes, they'll be doing it. They'll be making sure they're sleeping good, they're eating good, they're recovering good. They're just the all-round professional, and that's something that I've gotten better at over the years for sure.
And so, great, thanks, Ali. And certainly, I know from my experiences, coming up as a junior athlete, sleep was often not spoken about as an important performance ingredient. And I know now it's certainly a lot more flavoursome, if you like, and more people are aware of it. And it's I've heard it said that sleep's the number one pillar of good health. It's a very bad pun, but bedrock that everything else rests on. Ali, the support network. You mentioned Kel. You've mentioned your mum and dad. You've mentioned Zane, Glenn, your coach. Certainly, I have a relationship with him in the physiotherapy room.
Of course.
Tell us about, though, the sort of, what it means to you, I guess, to have a supportive support network.
Oh, it means the world. It literally means the world. On the weekend, as I said, we had rounds 1 and 2 of the Nutri series up at Coolum, and I've always been blessed to have a great network around me, and it was just so cool on the weekend to have people around me that I could just tell they were just happy for me no matter what the result was, no matter how I went, no matter what I did. They were, they love me, and I've obviously got Zane, who's just he's incredible. Trev's behind him, who helps me a lot with my, finding my purpose and helping people and things like that. I've obviously got Kel, that's just, I've been with for 3 years now, and she's been through all those sort of waves with me. And then obviously got Glenn at Southport. I've got someone like yourself, mate, that's just they're not just there as a coach or to help me. They're there for friends, and I think that's really important. So I've got so many great people around me in my life, mate. Great people here at the surf club. I've had great people on the Sunshine Coast at the surf club there. Kingy was a huge one for me. The sponsors that I deal with every day are fantastic. I've built really good relationships with them. And then also the people down in Kiama, mate. They are my best friends. And, I've just, as I said, I've been so blessed with my life, mate. Not even in the sport, just to have great people around me that I love, and it's honestly the best feeling, mate, when you finish your race on the weekend and they're there to talk to you and give you a hug and a high five and get a photo with, and it's honestly, mate, it's the best thing. And you know, I've got to thank you for, you know, I said that to Kel like yesterday. I said, man, it's, you know, I've got so many amazing people around you like yourself that come in and want to help me, and sometimes I'm like, well, why do they want to help me, you know, like, and it's an amazing feeling, mate. And you know, there's someone out there, you know, obviously upstairs that's looking out for me for sure.
And Ali, in sort of bringing this to a close, so the support network's been a critical part in your journey. What's in the bucket list for Ali Day in life, outside of Ironman racing, outside of the professional that, you know, that we see on the sporting field? What's in that list, on that list?
After what I do?
In life, what are the things that you...
Yeah, I guess I sort of touched on it before, mate, and I guess since I was 18, mate, I've always sort of, what am I going to do? What am I going to do after this sport? You know, it used to be a really scary prospect for me. I used to be like, man, should I go do uni? Should I go do an apprenticeship? What am I going to do when this is all over, sort of thing? I'd still like to, obviously, there's a few more little things I'd love to do in this sport, you know, while I'm here, and enjoy it at the same time. I'd obviously love to give back when I do finish, because hopefully by then I'll know a little bit more than I do now, and hopefully can coach kids or coach kids that are guys that are coming through trying to qualify, and hopefully I can just you know, pass on some of my knowledge. And that's not just training. I think I'd like to help kids, you know, mentally upstairs. I'd like to really, I think I have the ability to be able to help people and motivate people and encourage people to be, to love what they do. And that's not just in sport. I think that's in life too. I'd love to help people like that. And then, yeah, the last few weeks I've had visions of myself just, you know, opening some sort of facility somewhere that, I think we spoke about the other day, you know, an environment where it's a gym or whatever it is, where people come in, and I don't know how it would work. I think Kel would help me as well, and we help people create better versions of themselves, pretty much.
Wow. Yeah. Powerful. And Ali, what would the 25-year-old version of yourself tell the 15-year-old version of yourself?
Yeah, that's a good one. Work hard, for sure. That's, you know, my number one thing. Work hard. Don't ever give up, because, you know, obviously everyone's been through that phase of wanting to give up and nearly giving up or giving up. And I think you learn from that. So that's another one. And yeah, for me, it's a hard question, mate. I'll have to come back to you on that one. But just for me, I guess recently, it's just find out what you love and find out what your dream lifestyle wants to look like, and go get it. You know, like, that's what you should do. You know, there's no one stopping you or holding you back. You can do it. And that's, ultimately that's what's driven me to where I am now.
Mate, thank you very much, Ali Day, for your time, and I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Cheers, mate.
And getting to learn a little bit more of the story that sits behind the the popular face, the popular personality that we all see. So Ali Day, all the best for the rest of the 2015, 2016 Nutrigrain series, and I know that our listeners will really get a lot out of this show. So thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.